Your manager knows. That's the part you need to sit with first. Not suspects, not hasn't really thought about it, knows. They have seen the number that the new hire 2 desks over is making. They have seen the recruiter emails forwarded around. They know what the market pays for what you do, because they had to approve a rec at that rate 3 months ago. And they let you keep showing up at the old number. Here's the thing nobody says out loud. The gap between what you're worth and what you're paid is not a mistake. It's not an oversight waiting to be corrected once someone gets to it. It is a decision, a quiet one, made by people who are very comfortable because the cost of fixing it lands on a spreadsheet and the cost of not fixing it lands on you. Let's start with what's real, because the numbers are almost insulting once you see them side by side. If you stay put this year, you can expect a raise. Companies are planning to increase their salary budgets by an average of 3.4% in 2026, in line with what they actually paid out in 2025. Mercer's survey of more than 1,000 organizations lands in the same place. Employers plan to hold base merit increases at 3.2% and total increases at 3.5%. That's the reward for loyalty, 3.5%. Right around the rate of inflation, which means in real terms, you treaded water for a year. Now here's what happens if you leave. For most of the last few years, job switchers walked into double-digit raises. The average salary increase when changing jobs has run as high as 14.8%, against wage growth of under 6% for people who stayed. The market has cooled since, and the gap has narrowed, but it has not closed. In April 2022, there was an 8.4 percentage point chasm between switchers and stayers. By March 2025, the difference in median pay increases had narrowed to 1.9 points. Smaller. Still there. Still pointing in one direction. Read that again. The single most reliable way to get paid what you're worth is to stop working for the people who currently employ you. You felt that, didn't you? That little drop in your stomach. That's not cynicism, that's recognition. Here's the part that stings more. You're not imagining the squeeze. The largest share of workers in 4 years, 62%, say their paychecks have not kept pace with the increase in their household expenses. Over the past 12 months, only 44% of workers got a raise at their current employer. So less than half of you got anything at all. And the half that did mostly got a number that inflation already ate. This isn't a feeling, it's a measurement. 43% of US workers think they are underpaid. A newer global survey puts a sharper point on it. 1 in 5 workers feels severely underpaid and says they'd need a 32% pay raise to feel like they're getting paid enough. 32%. That's the size of the hole people are quietly walking around with every day at their desks. So if so many people know, and the data is this clear, why doesn't your manager just fix it? Here's what's actually happening, and it's not the story you tell yourself at 2 a.m. You think your manager is choosing between paying you fairly and being cheap. That's the version where they're the villain and you're the victim, and it feels true because it's simple, but it's mostly wrong. The real situation is uglier and more boring than that. Your manager often cannot fix your pay even when they want to. And the system is built so that the people who can fix it never have to look you in the eye. That's the quiet part. The part people don't talk about. Let's pull it apart. Start with the budget, because that's where the illusion lives. You picture a raise like a conversation. You make your case, your manager nods, the number changes. But that's not how the money moves. Your manager doesn't have a vault. They have an allocation, a pool handed down from above, sized before they ever fought for you, and it has to stretch across the whole team. Here's the math they're not showing you. The merit budget this year is around 3%. More than 8 out of 10 employers say they'll distribute that increased budget equally across the organization, rather than steering it toward high-demand skills or critical gaps. Equally, across everyone. So even your best people get the same flat sliver as the person who coasts. Your manager isn't deciding who deserves more. They're rationing a fixed amount of almost nothing. And the thing that used to be the escape hatch, the promotion, is closing too. Employers plan to promote fewer people in 2026, around 9% of their workforce, down from 10% the year before. When they do promote, the average pay bump is 8.7%. So the one move that actually changes your number is being handed to fewer people each year. The door isn't locked, it's just getting narrower, and there's a line. Now hold that next to the thing that actually makes you furious. The new hire. You know the one. They started 4 months ago. They ask you how things work. You train them a little, in the hallway, in the patient way you train someone you assume is below you. And then payroll glitches, or someone talks, or you just do the math on the job posting that's still live, and you find out they make more than you for the job you've been doing for 3 years. That is not a betrayal. That is a structure. It has a name, and HR people say it to each other in calm voices. It's called pay compression, and here is exactly how it happens to you. A company freezes raises during a tight period. The market keeps moving. New hire rates rise. So they bring in a new developer at $80,000, while the 3-year employee with the same skills stays at $75,000. Nobody decided you were worth less. They just decided it was cheaper to underpay the person who already said yes than to match the market for the person they still had to convince. That's the engine. The new hire has leverage. They can walk away. You already walked in, and the system prices loyalty as a discount. Here's the part that should genuinely bother you. The window where this metastasized was recent, and it was your career. The 2021 to 2024 period was particularly damaging. Intense competition for new talent drove starting salaries up sharply, while existing employees got merit increases of 3 to 4% a year, widening the gap between what new hires were offered and what long-tenured people earned. If you held a steady job through those years, you didn't just feel left behind. You were, mathematically, lapped by strangers, and your manager watched it happen in real time. This is the quiet part again. There is usually a fix for compression. It has a name too. An equity adjustment, funded by a dedicated budget that's typically 0.5% to 1.5% of payroll, approved outside the normal merit cycle. A separate pot of money, set aside specifically to correct the exact injustice you're living inside. The fix exists, the mechanism exists, the line item has a name. It just doesn't get funded. Companies with compression often keep the broken pay structure because of the cost of adjustments. Temporary relief, they call it. Temporary, in the sense that it lasts exactly as long as you keep tolerating it. So your manager isn't lying when they say, "There's nothing in the budget for that right now." There genuinely isn't. What they're not saying is that the budget is a choice someone above them made, and the someone above them decided your silence was worth more than your fairness. Okay, but say your manager is one of the good ones. Say they genuinely want to fix it. Why don't they fight harder? Here's what happens when they try. To get you an off-cycle raise, your manager has to go up the chain and make a case. They have to spend political capital, the finite kind, on you. They have to sit in a room with their own boss and a finance partner and argue that you specifically are worth breaking the pattern for. And the first question they get is the one that ends most of these conversations before they start. Is she a flight risk? Sit with how grotesque that question is. Not, is she underpaid? Not, is this fair? The question that unlocks money is whether you're about to leave. Your fairness is irrelevant. Your thread is the only currency that spends. And here's the trap inside the trap. If you've been loyal, if you've never once hinted you might walk, you have quietly told them you're not a flight risk. You optimized yourself into the cheapest possible version of yourself. The better an employee you've been, the weaker your manager's case becomes. They can't fight for you because you handed them no ammunition. This is why the counteroffer is such a sick little ritual. You bring in an outside offer. Suddenly, overnight, the money that wasn't in the budget materializes. The same company that couldn't find 3% for you finds 20% in an afternoon. Not because you became more valuable, because you finally became a flight risk. You stopped being a discount and started being a cost. And the maddening thing is, the cost of losing you was always enormous. They just never priced it, because they never had to. Here's the number they're ignoring. According to SHRM, replacing an employee typically costs between 6 and 9 months of that person's salary. Gallup puts the range at 50% to 200% of annual salary, depending on the role. A mid-level employee costs between 125% and 150% of their salary to replace. A highly specialized one, around 400%. So to avoid giving you a $10,000 raise, a company will cheerfully eat a $40,000 or $60,000 replacement bill later. Across the economy, Gallup estimates voluntary turnover costs U.S. businesses around $1 trillion. $1 trillion, spent avoiding raises that were a fraction of the size. That's not rational. So why do they do it? Because the raise is a line item with your manager's name on it today. The turnover cost is a vague, diffuse future problem that shows up in a different department's numbers, blamed on the labor market, owned by no one. The pain of paying you is concentrated and personal. The pain of losing you is spread out and deniable. Every incentive points at keeping you cheap until the exact second you're about to leave. And here's the part that should reframe everything. Robert Half found that 38% of employees leave their jobs because of inadequate salary and benefits. The companies know this. They have the same data you're hearing right now. They've decided the math works out in their favor anyway, because most people don't leave. Most people stay and grumble and absorb it. They're betting on your inertia, and historically, they win that bet. Look at who actually does something about it. Americans are by far the most willing to leave for a 20% raise. 61% said they'd absolutely go. But would and did are different verbs. The people most dissatisfied with their pay are also the most likely to feel seriously underpaid, and yet so many choose to stay. Family, mortgages, the risk of the unknown. The very responsibilities that make the underpayment hurt the most are the same ones that chain you to it. That's the cage, and your employer knows the shape of it better than you do. So that's the diagnosis. Your manager knows. The fix exists. The budget is a choice. Your loyalty is being priced as a discount, and your only real leverage is the credible threat to leave, which you've spent years carefully not making. The obvious question is what you actually do with all this. Not a pep talk, a plan. So here's what you do, and none of it involves working harder, because the cruelest joke in all of this is that effort was never the variable. Start by getting the number, the real one. Not the one your manager floats, not the one you assume. Most workers, 82%, say they know their worth, and the way they get there is concrete. Comparing salary against online market rates, salary guides, and live job postings. Pull the recs your own company is open. Pull the ones at your competitors. The number a stranger would be offered to do your job tomorrow is your actual market value. Everything below that is a discount you're personally financing. HR dive. Then write it down, all of it. The project you owned. The thing that shipped because you stayed late. The revenue line that has your fingerprints on it. Not for your own comfort, for the conversation. When you ask, you are not asking your manager to be generous. You're asking them to walk into a room and make a case, and you're handing them the case pre-built so they can't say they didn't have the material. And then you say the quiet word out loud. Equity adjustment. You name it. You point at the new hire making more than you for the same work. You call it what HR calls it, and you ask for the off-cycle correction that the company already has a mechanism for. You're not inventing a favor. You're requesting a fix that exists on a shelf they're choosing not to reach. Here's the part nobody wants to tell you, so I will. The leverage is real, or it isn't. The counteroffer ritual taught you the rule. Money appears when you become a flight risk. You don't have to bluff. Bluffing gets you fired by people who call it well. What you have to do is become genuinely optional. Actually interview. Actually take the calls. Not to threaten, just to know. Because the calm that comes from having a real outside number is something your manager can feel across a desk, and it changes the conversation more than any argument you could rehearse. And if you do all of that, and the answer is still, there's nothing right now, believe them. Not because they're cruel, because they just told you the truth about where you rank in the choices being made above their heads. That's information. Among workers who don't see real raises, 31% say they'd have to leave their job to get a significant one. Sometimes the system is telling you, in the only language it speaks, that the door is the raise. HR dive. Here's where it all circles back. Your manager knows you're underpaid. That was true at the start of this, and it's true now. What's changed is what you understand about the silence. It was never confusion. It was never an oversight that a good attitude would eventually correct. It was a calm bet that you'd keep showing up at the old number, because the people who said it would never have to feel the cost of it. You become the person who stops financing your own discount. Not because you're bitter, because you finally did the math they were hoping you wouldn't. They're betting on your inertia. Stop being a sure thing.